What one's all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of the book Beauty Beyond the Thorns, Discovering Gift and Suffering, no other than Miss Darcy J. Steiner.
I love the
Welcome.
introduction. Thank you, Daniel. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Darcy. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
You betcha. So I am from Denver, Colorado, and a native, other than 4 years living in Los Angeles during riots and floods and the Northridge earthquake and all of that. So we moved back home to Denver and raised our two daughters here, and still live in the same house. So um,
Yes.
yeah. So outside of that, I am an author, a speaker, a nutritionist, and so I stay very, very busy sitting at my computer.
Definitely. And Miss Darcy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. What was the pivotal moment or experience that compelled you to write Beauty Beyond the Thorns?
Well, it was a long journey to getting there. I have a chronic pain condition called complex regional pain syndrome, and it is described as the most painful condition known to man. It's more painful than cancer, than amputation, etc. And so it cripples me. Literally, I am unable to walk very often. I go through up and down times, and nerve pain is hard to cure. But as a nutritionist, I constantly work on my health and help others with their pain and do so for myself. But I'll tell you, there's nothing that helps my pain more than writing a book. And the reason why is because my brain is so focused on creating something that it forgets for a time the intensity of my pain. And so that's the beautiful thing about writing books that people need for pain or going through a difficult time is I'm right there with you.
Mm, definitely. And Miss Darcy, how do you define suffering with the context of your book, and how does it differ from everyday hardship?
Well, suffering is different for everyone. It's a very unique experience. um, we go through it in different ways. So for instance, somebody could be going through divorce or job loss or any kind of suffering. Mine happens to be physical, but my book comes with a study guide. It's a book set, and the study guide walks people through whatever they're going through to help understand the book in a unique way, in their way, not my way necessarily, but in a way that helps them. So the questions help personalize it for their life. Um, so what was the part B of your question, Daniel?
Miss Darcy, how you define suffering with the context of your book, and how does it differ from everyday hardship?
How does it differ from everyday hardship? Um, you know, there are certain books out there that have really made a defining moment for us, right? We can all remember when we read someone's words and we related to them. and they helped change us and grow us. And so my hope is that in my suffering, I hope to be that person where you read my words and you feel like you made a new best friend, and that those words can help you through a moment and help define maybe your suffering in a different way than you originally experienced it. Maybe it can help you see beauty on the other side, because I talk about finding gifts in suffering. They are there. They are there. Things happen in suffering that don't happen during other times in our lives. And so we have to look for what's the good in this. Well, the good is that I've learned to persevere more than I would have without going through what I'm going through. I've learned deeper compassion because of what I've gone through.
Mm.
I've learned to love more deeply. So these are the kinds of things that I talk about in Beauty Beyond the Thorns, because there are thorns in our lives, but there's also beauty. So we have to look beyond the pain and into what could this mean for me? How could this be defined in a different way? How can I reframe this so that there's a more positive context to it?
Miss Darcy, which chapter or sections of the book required the most vulnerability to write and why?
The first chapter. The first chapter gives you a little window into my life. Um, at the very beginning, when I fell down the stairs, I had a fall down the stairs, which initiated this complex regional pain syndrome. And I talk about it there, and I had to rewrite the chapter many times. I think it was the last chapter I wrote. I didn't want to write too much about that time because I didn't want to expose my kids to the vulnerability that I was exposing myself to. So I give a little window into an experience when they were downstairs eating dinner and I was upstairs in bed just above them, and I could hear them laughing and having dinner together, and I wanted that. I I felt like I wasn't a part of the family in a way. And so to feel so alone when your family's right below you having dinner. And so I share about this story, and curling up into a ball and not being able to turn the light on because it was getting dark, and having to lay there in the dark, and I was cold and I couldn't get a blanket. And so just the things that come with disability and not being able to take care of yourself was is really hard to talk about and really hard to write about. But if I wasn't vulnerable about it, it wouldn't be authentic, and it would not affect the reader in the way that I wanted it to.
Definitely. And Miss Darcy, we salute you for doing that, for sharing to the world, to empower us. How did your faith specifically shape your perspective on finding gift in suffering?
Faith was the whole reason I found gifts. Um, I am a believer in God, and I search for meaning in everything. What could this mean? How could this shape me? How can I be, a better person? What do you want me to learn, God, in this? And sometimes I get furious with him. It's kind of, I experience the gamut of emotion, but that's also a vulnerable place to be, but also a real place to be that the reader can relate to is sometimes we don't understand why God has us go through difficulties when, you know, we blame God when really there's Satan who's out there and he's the one to blame. But we tend to blame God instead. And so I think I've learned to embrace that these gifts that are there. The greatest gift of all in my suffering has been a deeper relationship with Him. And I love that because it keeps me going and looking for more gifts. I have learned so much about finding Him in the darkness when I thought He didn't inhabit darkness. But come to find out, He does. He's everywhere. So why wouldn't He be where we are when we're experiencing dark times? You know. So
Definitely.
yeah. So I embrace suffering in those difficult times.
Miss Darcy, how does your approach to finding beauty give move beyond simplistic platitudes like everything happens for a reason?
Yeah, that is a good question, Daniel, because that's oftentimes where our mind goes to is giving those things, like God has a reason, or you'll come out of this, or this is just temporary, or there's so many of those things. And we have to be very thoughtful in the way that we approach people who are going through a difficult time. There's a story in the Bible about Job, the man Job who suffered immense suffering and lost 10 children. Now, is there anything that you could say to this man, a platitude that you could give him that would comfort him? There's nothing that I can think of. And so we must be careful to not give platitudes to people because what they are going through is acute suffering, um, or perhaps chronic. Like for me, it's chronic. I've heard it all. Well, you look good. You know, I mean, that's not something sensitive to say to someone who's in severe chronic pain. Well, you look good. That does nothing for me. If somebody tells me I look good, even though I'm hurting, it doesn't make sense. And so I think we have to be more thoughtful and take a step back. And in the case of Job and his friends, they did fine when they showed up. And the first 7 days, they just sat beside him while he was scraping his sores with pottery. And they
Mm,
saw his suffering and they didn't say anything for 7 whole days. And then one of them broke out with a platitude, like, what did you do that made God angry with you? That's not helpful,
mhm.
And Job, it says Job was the most upright man in the land. So why is the most upright man in the land going through this severe suffering? It was because God trusted him. It's God does things in a different way than that we can relate to. We can't often relate to what he allows in our lives. He doesn't cause suffering, but sometimes he allows it. And he has good reason because he can see beyond this world into the spiritual realm and see how it shapes us and see how it will have an impact on other people. And that's what I hope for. I hope that my suffering helps other people to suffer less. I want my words to make that difference for other people. So I don't want to give platitudes. I want to give real, meaningful, but brief messages of hope.
Miss Darcy, As an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
Short term is so I just finished a book that I'm going to be querying this month to agents, and I wrote the entire book before I queried them, but it took me 3 years to write. And so that would have been a long term goal, but it's about the Psalms and the backstories of the Psalms. So when we read a Psalm, we might read, for instance, King David saying, "How long, Lord? How long?" But what does that mean? Where was he? What was he experiencing? And so I combined the backstories, the history stories, with the psalm so that we can understand the full picture of that psalm. And it's taken a lot of research. So that is my short-term goal, is to get that picked up by an agent. And my long-term goal is to continue writing. I have so many more books. I want to write a nutrition book. I want to write a book about the Lord's Prayer that I've already begun. Um, and so I want to just continue writing and speaking. I love speaking to audiences and teaching them what I've learned and sharing stories. I think storytelling is a lost art. And I think it's so impactful when we can tell good stories to impact the world. So I want to become a better storyteller for my speaking, for my writing, within my writing, and in podcasts. You know, everything that I do marketing, I want to be a good storyteller.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Darcy, and looking forward for more success and for sure for the books that you will write.
Thank you.
And and what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be an author like you?
Oh gosh, just keep going at it. Don't give up. If you need inspiration, write outside. Sometimes we get stuck when we're typing on a typewriter, but if you get pen and paper, there's something in our brain that we're wired to doing in writing out prose with pen and paper. So the the first thing that I wrote was a poem in Beauty Beyond the Thorns, and it was pen and paper in the garage. I was sitting in the sun. It's another story, but I was sitting in the sun in the garage in my wheelchair and trying to get some sun in the winter. And I wrote a poem longhand. I didn't have a computer outside, so I think, just keep at it. Find different ways that resonate with you. I always teach. So because I'm excuse me, because I'm also a nutritionist, I say chapter by chapter, you're adding a new ingredient to your secret sauce. So if you look at your book chapters as a recipe and you're adding something else to your secret sauce, and then you let it sit for a little while and simmer, and then you go back to it and you can see how things need to be changed. And that's how you edit, is after you let it sit for a while and simmer. And then you just keep improving upon it, making it better and better and better. And then you have your book, your secret sauce.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your advice, Miss Darcy. And can you please recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Yes. Well, gosh, there's so many. I would say I would say Love Does by Bob Goff. Bob was one of my mentors. I took a writing class with him during COVID. It was an online writing course. In his book, Love Does, he writes short chapters. And he is one of the best storytellers that I know. His books are engaging, they're funny. And so I was looking at my chapters and I thought, I want to write a lot of short chapters because that's what Bob did. And it's been very effective for him. And so I did that. I wrote short chapters and tried to engage, my audiences and get them jumping from one chapter to the next. So I'd have to say Bob Goff.
Thank you for that recommendation, Miss Darcy, and hoping that our listeners or people watching right now will read it, and for sure they will empower to it. And tell us, Miss Darcy, you created a workbook for your or study guide for Beauty Beyond. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. So the study guide, I realized when people read my story, not everyone is going to have physical pain. And I decided, there's going to be groups of people that could benefit from this story. For instance, Bible studies, recovery groups, church retreats. And so I went through the book and the study guide with a group of women at my church. And each woman was going through something different at the time. So, for instance, someone had just become a widow, someone had just become divorced, a couple people were going through physical challenges. So, everyone had a different issue. But the questions are designed to ask you as you read a chapter what it is for you that you need in this experience to help you get better. And by the time we got to the end of the 12 weeks, so I put 3 chapters in each week, um, I saw these women transform. And I'm not just saying this to brag on my book. I'm saying this literally. I got to watch 12 women's lives change as a result of using the study guide with the book. And it was a beautiful experience I got to watch. And I'm so grateful that I did it. And I've been able to do it with some other groups online. I've gone to some book clubs and have taught one of the lessons. And each time I've heard the study guide really enhance the experience. So I think they're best together, and that's my opinion. Some people just like to read the book, and that's fine too. But I have found that the set is kind of what people enjoy the most.
Definitely. So, Miss Darcy, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in fourth season, as well as my Movie 101 review and Music 101, Science 101, and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Darcy, ultimately, what is the one lasting feeling or conviction you most hope readers carry with them long after finishing Beauty Beyond the Thorns?
Well, I would hope that they would carry along with them perseverance and compassion and love. those are the messages. I think we all need hope in this world. We'd we'd be lost without hope, but there's always hope. And I think if we look to give compassion to other people, it helps us to be less selfish, and it helps us to be more outward focused. And in doing so, we become more loving, and the world needs more love.
Miss Darcy Steiner, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book as well as your study guide?
Yes, please. My website is darcijsteiner.com. That's DARCI, middle initial J, Steiner, STEINER.com. If you go there, you'll find all the links to my socials, and Amazon carries both of my books.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Darcy Steiner because if you support her, for sure, more and more and more empowering books to come like this. So, Miss Darcy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.